Hello, welcome back to my channel where we discuss the MCC laws of cricket. Yesterday in the last session we discussed Law 12, a part of Law 12, and towards the end I made some statements while summing up which appear to be a little confusing even to me. So let me reiterate a few points to make things clearer. Now we have under Law 12.4 a provision which says the starting of an over. Throughout the game, a new over shall always be started. The umpire walking up of the striker's end umpire walks up at his normal pace and reaches the bowler's end before time is reached. As long as that happens, we will always bowl. This is the general principle will always apply to throughout the game to the starting of the. That is only it will depend only on one single factor, nothing else. And after that point, if the bowling side delays or whatever, the actual over might start even after time has been reached. It is of no consequence. Secondly, going further, we have a provision. Once an over is started, it should be completed. It should be completed before we go on for an interval. However, there is a provision which says that if a wicket falls or a batter retires when less than 3 minutes remain for the interval. Now the intervals being lunch, tea, and from close of play on one day till the game starts the next day, that is also interval. Therefore, this applies to the close of play on these days also, other than the last day. And if a wicket falls after that point of time or thereafter, the over will not be completed. We have to go in and proceed for the interval. This law also says that if the wicket falls, even if the wicket falls on the last ball. Now, when it falls on the last ball, the question arises not a matter of completion of an over. It is a matter of whether or not a new over is to be begun, which I have already told you depends on one factor. But the law 12.5 says that rule won't apply. It will be overridden by this rule which says that you will go for lunch. So we have a rule, and this is the exception. If it is fall of wicket within those 3 minutes, you have to proceed for lunch, even if it is the last ball. You will not start. There is ample time for the umpire to walk up at his normal pace. More 2 minutes were left. He's got ample time. But because the wicket fell within those 3 minutes, we will proceed for the interval. Then we have another rule which tells us that what about the last over of the match? There is a different. It is treated differently. As regards the last over of the match, the laws tell us that this rule about closing of play when wicket falls within 3 minutes will not apply. Therefore, the last over will always be completed. Even though a wicket falls within those 3 minutes, or it falls after time has been reached. I gave you an example from my experience how we dealt with that situation where 3 wickets fell in that over, 1 within the 3 minutes and 2 even after time was reached. This over has always got to be completed. Of course, if during the course of the over the players have occasion to leave the field, suppose there is a small drizzle, you will not come back and play. That is the rule. I hope I have made this amply clear. We will go on to Law 12.6, which deals with the last hour of play, the last hour of the match in umpire. Coming to Law 12.6, last hour of the match, the number of overs. Now, historically, it was observed that in test matches and all, and I have myself been witness to a test match. I think it was India playing against England at the Brabant Stadium, where India was in a situation to win the game, and the fielding side of England was fielding, and they dragged on that last hour they bowled very few overs there, and there I think that India was deprived of a win. There were several such situations around the globe during that period, and the lawmakers decided to found a remedy for it, so to say, and the remedy being that in the last hour of play, the fielding side shall bowl a minimum of 20 overs. Now that is a minimum. In case you finish bowling 20 overs before the closing time is reached, you have to go on till time is finished. But if the 20, when you reach time, 20 overs are not bowled, then you have to go on and play, light permitting, to finish the 20 overs. That is the remedy they tried to implement, and this has been in force for quite a while. In ICC games, of course, it is 15 overs during the last hour of play. Here we've got 20 overs. Now this whole system is subjected to certain rules which we will be studying, talking about. Any learner needs to do some examples of actual play and tell us what will be the minimum overs after a break. But then I will be elaborating on the principles that you have to observe, and I will do it by example. Now here during our discussion, always the last hour begins at 4 p.m. Close of play is 5 p.m. We will begin our discussion on that basis. What happens is, now in the normal run of play, never at the point of 4 p.m. There might be an over in progress. Never will it be that there is an over is finished at that point. There will be an over in progress. Sometimes one ball only bowled, sometimes two balls bowled, sometimes five balls bowled. The law says that you allow that 4 p.m. to pass, and immediately after that the over that begins the fresh is the first of the minimum overs. And at that time, before starting that first of the minimum over, the umpire is supposed to turn to the scorer and tell him, indicate to him that this is the signal, that the last hour has begun, and we will also announce that. I was in the habit of announcing the last hour has begun. We will play 20 overs from this time onwards. And in almost all grounds, I think the practice then is to have a score of overs 20 placed on the board, which will come down as you go on, which gives a very good indication to the players there that we have started and how many overs are remain to be bowled. Now once you have indicated them commencement of the 20 overs to the scorers, the period of play after the signal shall be called the last hour of play, regardless of its actual duration. Now very clearly, if you start the last hour at 4:03, it is not an hour, it is less than an hour, or it might go ahead. It's not that period, even though less or more, it will still be called the last hour of play, and it has its reason. There are reasons for it. Now coming to this bowling of 20 overs, what happens if there is an interval there? What do you do then? What happens if there is an interruption, rains fall, or there is a bit of fog running across the ground and there is an interruption of say about 15 minutes? What do you do then? Then most certainly it stands to reason that the 20 will be reduced, applying certain rules, though that number of 20 is going to be reduced. On what basis it is to be reduced and what is to be done is given in the rules now, which we will be discussing, and I'd like to stress some of them. The interruptions are treated differently, whereas if there is an interval between innings, that is treated differently. The reason for it also I will try to tell you. And there are three, at the outset let me tell you, there are three methods for calculation of the minimum overs. There are three methods. The first is the deduction method. We will call it the deduction method. The second is the overs left method. And the third is the time left method. Alright? These are the three methods. Which method is to be used when is defined in the laws, and each of the methods have certain rules which you should know before you can efficiently apply this provision in the laws. and come out with the right answer. How many overs are you going to allow the side on resumption? That is ultimately what will happen. We will be discussing those in detail. Now coming to law 12.7, last hour of the match, interruptions of play. The law says that the deduction method only shall be applicable whenever there is an interruption in play. Now there are certain rules that we have to observe. But remember this principle, interruption in play, deductions method will be used. Fine. Now it is possible that at 4 o'clock there is already an interruption in play. At 4 p.m. you are sitting inside and there is already an interruption in play. I would make an announcement. Gentlemen, we have started the last hour of play. We are at 4 p.m. The minimum over we'll tell you how many minimum, which will depend on the resumption, time of resumption. And then what time you have to take into account is not the whole of the interruption, but that time after 4 p.m. because you have lost time inside the last hour. It may be 5 minutes, it may be 10 minutes. The interruption has started much earlier. It may be 5-10 minutes or whatever, and you note down the number of minutes, the minutes lost during the last hour. You have to, from 20, then deduct 1 over for every full 3 minutes. For every full 3 minutes. If it is 10 minutes, you will deduct 3 overs for that, the 10 minutes lost. 1 minute will go waste. 1 minute will go waste. It doesn't matter. All your deductions will be based on 1 over per 3 minutes will go waste. The law even goes further to tell us that once there may be, since it is a rainy day, you have already had a 10-minute break. During the course of the last hour, there is a 5-minute shower, and you have come off. You have to again apply the deduction method. Naturally, when 5 minutes are lost, you will deduct 1 over for those 5 minutes lost. But here you lost 1 minute, and here you have 2 remainders, a 1 minute remainder and a 2 minute remainder. Law prohibits you from aggregating the two. The law prohibits you from aggregating the two. What is you should forget about that 1 minute loss. You should forget about this 2 minutes loss. Never combine those. What is done is done. What is the past is the past. Now you have to move only forward. So in this case, suppose you already said on resumption that 17 will be bowled. After a while, they bowled 3-4 overs, and then you deducted 1 more over. You will tell them so many is the minimum that you will have to bowl on resumption. That is how it works. So this is one principle that you should take care of. You should always remember. Then going further, calculate over basis of 1. This is fine. We got this. More than 1 should not be aggregated. Okay. Another principle that is there is that interruption. During, now taking a fresh example, you started play at 4:01. You have signaled start of the last hour, and you announce that 20 minimum have to be bowled after this point of time. And after 2.3 overs have been bowled, 2.3 overs have been bowled. What will you do about that part over? How will you account for that? And there is a 5-minute interval. There is a 5-minute interruption. So what you will do is, for your calculations, you will take as 20 minus 3. The law says that it will not count as one of the minimum overs to be bowled. So take them as, not to take them as to be bowled, but you take them as to be bowled. I'll tell you there is a practical reason for it. You don't deal in fractions. 20 minus 3 is 17. minus 1 that you will deduct on account of the interruption. So you have 16 overs. Those 3 balls and 16 overs have to be bowled. 3 balls will naturally, that over remain, incomplete over has to be complete. That principle is also stated. When there is an incomplete over before an interruption, it is quite a natural part of the game that the 3 overs will be bowled. So state your answer as 3 balls and 16 overs. Now suppose you take that 2.3 as 2 overs, you will get 17 there. 20 minus 2 minus 1 is 17. There is a very good risk of your announcing that 3 balls and 17 overs. That would be a mistake. So that is why I suggest, for practical reasons, the law is there to support us, but for practical reasons, take this part over as already bowled. Whether you cannot forget, you will get only 16 here as the answer, and there is no way these 3 balls are not going to be bowled. That same bowler will come to you and he'll bowl it. But you should be careful not to make a mistake with the total number of overs. I hope I am making this point clear. Another point that you need to remember is the law here says 12.7.1. Have a look at it. The time lost for an interruption is counted from the call of time until the time for resumption is decided by the umpires, regardless of when play is actually called. We have seen that an interruption will be counted from the time is called. You are supposed to call time at the start of an interruption, and you will call play at the end of the interruption. So there is, it is maybe 12 minutes, 13 minutes, whatever. It will count from this call to this call. Not so here. Not so here. Not so for the purpose of your calculations. What does this particular law say? It says that the time of the interruption for the purpose of your calculations will be counted from the time you call time. The interruption took place at 4:10 p.m. 4:10 p.m. You went in, you spent a while in the pavilion, and the rains went away, and you felt that okay, you came briefly to have a look at the pitch. All right, we are resuming in 5 minutes, and 4:25 is the 4:30 is the time you gave for resumption. 4 to 4:30. In your calculations, you have taken 20 minutes, and on the basis of 20 minutes, you have whatever be the other overs bowled and all that. You have taken 20 minutes as time lost and deducted 6 overs on account of it, applying that divide by 3. 2 minutes for remainder, which goes waste. So whatever it is, for the 20 you have deducted 6 overs. Now when you go on at 5:30, since it is a wet ground, it is more than likely that the area surrounding the striker might need some treatment, because it could slip. He needs to sprinkle sawdust, and the bowler might take a small trial run and find that he slips in his follow through. That might require attention. Maybe the striker wants the side screen to be moved. Whatever be the reasons for it, these are things that are very likely to happen in a wet game. And the law tells us, regardless of when play is called, you will stick to your calculation of 20. The umpires are not expected in these circumstances to fish out their notebooks and start fresh calculations, making fresh calculations on the ground. That is not what you are supposed to do. That is the significance of this particular rule. So always remember, all calculations of that you have done on the field of play will stand, and if the actual call of play is instead of 4:30 is 4:33, you will not deduct an additional over. I hope that is clear and must be remembered by all. This is all as regarding this deductions method. Like I just to reiterate that 3 minute deduction on the basis of 1 over for every full 3 minutes, no aggregation of 2 different remainders, and the time will be taken, the time that you will take will be from the time you call time by the time and the time you have conveyed as the time for assumption. It doesn't count from time to play, the call of time till the call of play. This is one important principle that you have to allow. And my suggestion to you, like I mentioned, if that part over before the interruption, please take it in as over bold. Don't deal in fractions. Take it as overs bold. Even if you deal with fractions, or then umpire, we are not supposed to be. I prefer that you take it instead of dealing in fractions. Take it here as a round. This thing, you arrive at a round 16 over figure, which will inform 3 balls and 16 overs. But if you don't do that, if you take this as 2, then you will end up with 17 and make a mistake of 1 over. That is very, very likely to happen. Try and not, and sometimes things can be get a little bit hurried while you're making calculations. Too many people asking you how many overs will be bowled, how many do we get to face, and all that kind of thing. So you can get a bit hassled in these circumstances, but do the calculation, then come out and tell them, look, when we resume at this time, so many overs will be bowled. Fine. We'll discuss the intervals. When the last hour of the match, what do we do when there is an interval between innings? Not an interruption, but an interval between innings. The first thing we are told is that if an interval is in progress at 4 p.m., at the time the last hour is to start, as per the clock, an interval, it could very well happen, and a 10-minute interval, 55, the interval is started, and an interval is in progress when you are going in. How do you deal with this? The law tells us very simply, use the deduction method. Use the deduction method. You will not use the time left and the overs left method, which are prescribed for for intervals. So therefore, out of 20, you will deduct 1 for the 5 minutes lost, and you resume with 19 on the board, 19 overs to be bowled. You will get 19 there on the board. Now, having said this, now let us go ahead and say the law says that whenever a new innings is to be started during the last of the match, if an innings ends, so that a new innings is to be started during the last hour of the match, the interval starts with the end of the innings and to end 10 minutes later, regardless of when play is actually called. Here, the instructions are that you will take it hard and fast. 10 minutes will be the interval. Like for interruption, from the call of time till the time you have informed will be the time taken for your calculation. Here it is a rigid 10 minutes. You will deduct 3 overs for those 10 minutes, regardless of what time play is being called. Like I told you, I gave you an example that there could be many reasons for play to start late, owing to the wet conditions and all. So you will always count it at 3. You will not make any fresh calculations on the field of play. Alright? Over in progress. If the innings ends after the last hour is started, if the innings end after the last hour has started, now we are coming to a situation where an innings ends after the last hour is started. So after 4 p.m. or whenever you have signaled this, after that point of time, not at 4 p.m. because then the last over is still in progress and an over is still in progress, not that one. Your last hour starts at whatever time you make the signal. So it may be the first over after that, second over, whatever, and an innings ends at that time. The instructions to us are that 2 calculations are to be made. 2 calculations are to be made. The overs remaining calculation, and the time remaining calculation. These are the 2. There are certain rules to be observed with regard to each of them. I will come to other details later. Now let us discuss the rules that are applicable. Firstly, overs remaining, what you are required to do is note the number of overs remaining to be bowled. Note the number of overs out of the 20 remaining to be bowled. Suppose that it is you have bowled 2.4 overs. How many overs remain to be bowled? 17.2. Now it is an incomplete over. The law says this incomplete over you round up to 17. If this is not a whole number, it is rounded up to the next whole number. You will take it as 18. Alright, after arriving at 18, you will make a deduction of 3 overs for the 10 minutes break, which doesn't change even if there is a late start, as we have seen. So 18 minus 3, you will bowl 15 overs. There is no question of completing the incomplete over because an innings is ended. So let me reiterate, whenever wicket falls, the side is out, you have to immediately note you will already be shown 18 there, 2 point something. When that it becomes 3 overs are finished, that will drop to 17. That is what you can take as a hint. You already got 18 there, you will take those 18 minus 3, 15. If it is but in your notebook you will write 17.4 overs bowled, to be bowled, remaining 17.4 overs, rounded off to 18, rounded upwards to 18, minus 3 for the interval, you get 15 overs. That is how it works. It's that simple. That is one part of it. The second part is overs remaining. The second part is time remaining. Now the time of the wicket falling has to be noted. Note the time remaining until the agreed time for close of play. Deduct 10 minutes. Fine, you have to deduct 10 minutes. Suppose at 4:10 the side is out, you will deduct 10 minutes for the interval. That leaves you with how many minutes? 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Divide 40 by 3 and allow 1 over for every 3 minutes or part of 3 minutes, plus 1 over for the so you will have 13 plus 1 for that 1 minute, you will have 14 overs. Fine, you will have 14 overs. So this is the method that you have to adopt for time remaining. Note down the time remaining, deduct 10 with your watch will tell you. As it is, you are going to note down the time, minus 10, then time remaining, divide by 3 and allow the number of overs, calculate number of overs calculate the number of overs on the basis of 1 for every 3 full minutes or a part of the 3-minute block. So like I said, if it is 40 minutes left, so if it is 25 minutes left, you will allow 9 overs. If it is 10 minutes left at the end, you will allow 4 overs. For these 10 minutes, you would have deducted 3, but when it comes to allowing overs, it will be always upward 4. Suppose in any game, as a matter of exercise, just to reiterate my point and reinforce my point, suppose there are 20 minutes left of play after deducting the 10 minutes and all, and you will allow 6 plus 1, 7 overs for those 20 minutes. 6 into 3 is 18, and the 2 minutes remain, that will also count towards this. Now, having made the 2 calculations, in both these calculations umpire is supposed to make, and he is to allow the number of overs, communicate the number of overs, use the option which gives him the higher number of overs. The higher number of overs, always. So these are the principles laid down. Why is this so? Innings break. What this system does is, it takes care of the slow bowling or the speedier bowling of one side. It should not affect the other side. This is what it does. Suppose this side has bowled faster, it would have, if you use only one method, you would have got less number of overs, but the time left method takes care of it. or if they are bowling slowly and the side is out, now their slow bowling will burden the other side who might have to bowl more, but they will so that is why the rule is that apply the two there. That's fine. So it takes care of these two things. That is why it is has worked. That is how it works. Another thing is, suppose there has been an interruption and an interval later on during the last hour. So naturally, at the interruption you use the deduction method. At the interval you use these two methods and allow it. There is no hassle. Either way, it doesn't matter. What comes first? Having once used the time left and overs left method because it was a side was out. Now after the side came into bat, there is an interruption in play. You will revert to the deduction method. There is no problem with that at all. But what do you do when in an interruption there is a declaration? So that makes it more complicated, but again, apply your mind to it. It is simple. For those 10 minutes you will apply and if it is broken, it could be two parts. It is a 30-minute interruption. 5 minutes into the interruption he declares. So it is a 10-minute break, 10 minutes interval between innings, and then another few minutes of interruption. So that complicates it a bit. It requires thinking, and I can do many examples with this. So can you. Create a problem, apply these principles, and it is not at all difficult. These multiple things, they complicate things within one time frame, but apply your mind to it, you can do it easily. There is no hassle at all. Just apply the principles. So we can do any number of examples, and you need to properly understand this particular law. Do exercises which will check whether you can make that calculation. It is not all that difficult. Okay. Now in law 12, we come to law 12.9, conclusion of a match. We need to know clearly, for some purposes as we go along we'll understand for what reason this is important. When is the match concluded? When is a match concluded? It goes on to tell us as soon as the result is received. Now the result, we have got another law discussing in detail the result, but here it is listed. It says a win, win in a 2 innings match, or a win by a side in a one innings match. Or the umpires may award the match, which is another law, law 16, where the umpire can award a match to one of the two sides. And then we have matches which are played under an agreement about the restricted number of overs or restricted time frame. When that time is over, or the number of overs over, the match is concluded. Limited overs match being played, and the overs are finished, the match is concluded. And then there is a tie. We'll learn the difference between tie and draw as we go on later on. But what is important here for any learner to note is, a match is concluded in cases where a result is not reached earlier. If a result is there, it is concluded, but no result has been reached. When, as soon as both the time remaining and the overs remaining are completed. The agreed time has been reached for close of play. You have reached 5 p.m. On the last day, on the 5th day, and the minimum of overs to be bowled in the last hour are also finished. That also concludes the match, though there is no result. You come to 5 p.m. Maybe at 5:01, at 5:01 20 are over, 5 already over, time already over, number of overs over. Just a minute later, this match is concluded. Fine. Now this match is concluded if without a conclusion having been made under the so and so, the players have reason to leave the field during adverse. Now we are looking at a situation where at whatever stage of the match, maybe the last day or whatever, the day previous to the last day, there is no result. But owing to weather, light and ground conditions or exceptional circumstances, the players have left the field and there is no resumption. That match is concluded. That match is deemed to have concluded. It is at an end. So these are the some of these. What is 12.9.12 is important for you to know for a particular purpose, where both overs and time have to be finished for the match to be concluded. Right? We will understand the importance of this in another law, but this is something I would want you to contemplate over, think about, and we will go ahead from there. In the next session, we will be talking about Law 13, the innings, the follow-on, declaration and forfeiture, and in one session, and then we will go on with Law 16, the result. Bye.